Howdy, friends. This is Adam Ganser stopping by just to thank you so much for listening to us and all of our precious projects on the Small Beans Patreon. And if you have a couple extra bucks and haven't signed up for our $5 tier, I wanted to let you know there is some of the best entertainment anywhere on the internet just waiting for your listening pleasure. This includes episodes of I'll Show You Mine If You Show Me Yours, Spiel Boys, Star Trek The Next Futurama, and coming soon some very secret but very awesome projects we can't wait to show you. If you got the money and you feel like it, we'd sure love to have it. And thanks so much for listening to Small Beans.
It's time for dads now. Look, it's all about dads. I don't want you talking about anything but dads, 'cause it's all dads now. Yeah, it's inside dads. Inside dads.
Inside of them.
Inside dads. Inside dads.
Inside of them.
You're here. This is Inside Dads. I'm Abe Epperson.
I'm David Bell.
We are surrogate dads, I guess. We're not actually fathers.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I've been known to jizz around the block, but yeah,
You are known for that.
I don't believe I'm a father. Yeah,
I don't know if I'm a father. That's true.
yeah,
I don't think I am though.
yeah. If you're one of our kids, let us know. Like, if you're out there, if you're listening, and if you're a child of one of us,
email their Patreon, allsmallbeans.com
Yeah.
or narc.com at gmail.com.
Yeah, holler at us.
If this is your first one of these, the deal with this podcast, real quick. So we're going to talk about dad movies. Dave and I love our Harrison Fords, our Kevin Costners, our Bruce Willises. Dad shit. And it's become kind of a concept in the zeitgeist, especially perpetuated by the internet, of the concept of a dad film. And we're like, okay, but Hollywood has been telling us for decades what it means to be a dad. So what is that? What is actually a dad film? And we determined that it's like, wow, it's not one genre, it's many genres. And that's kind of the spectrum we're looking at this from. It transcends genre, the dad film. To be a daddy is a genre of its own.
We're very brave today. I think we're very courageous.
I think courageous.
And I think what we're doing is very important. And because today, if you're just joining us, it's a weird one, but what we're going to talk about today is that a dad movie doesn't even have to star a dad.
A dad. Yeah. We're taking a big step here. And I think the rest of this podcast should just be us talking about how great and brave we are.
Get a Pulitzer. Like, at least. Yeah. At least a Pulitzer. At least. Yeah.
What Lies Beneath from 2000.
That's correct.
Our posit. And this is actually a Dave idea. Dave brought this one to me and I was like, that's interesting. How so? And then he kind of gave me some bullet points. And then as I watched it, I was like, my God, Dave's right.
It's a dad movie. It's dad horror. We're doing horror today.
It's horror dad, and its protagonist is not Harrison Ford.
No.
It's Michelle Pfeiffer.
Yeah, we're gonna spoil this movie, and I'll say at the top of this is a movie that you might not want to be spoiled on. So if you haven't seen it, you might want to go see it. It's we were considering like Cape Fear, The Devil's Advocate.
There's a lot of options, but like that's more of the same. It's all just like
like Cape Fear is pretty obvious as a horror thriller.
This is obvious. We'll do those too.
Yeah, this probably, is eventually leaning more into horror. It's Robert Zemeckis who made this film while making Castaway. He made it because Tom Hanks had to lose weight, and he said, "Oh, okay, I'll make another film in between."
Fucking great,
right? It's like Zemeckis, take a break. But also,
like, no.
This is a matter of opinion, but I think it's very funny because I think this is the better movie. Like, he went and made a better movie while making Castaway, in my opinion.
That's interesting. I do not think that, but that's interesting.
This is also a very dad film because I realized Robert Zemeckis is kind of a dad director, isn't he?
He
you don't
really
think about him. Yeah, Forrest Gump, Contact, Castaway.
A lot of the, not political alignment, but like the stuff they like, the stuff they're interested in, what they want to talk about, what scenes are about, and the ambition behind it is in very simpatico with most dad directors that we think. And there are many.
This is also in the style of Hitchcock, like overtly so. Like he does a shot from Psycho.
Window. Yeah.
Yeah, and Rear Window, which is a very dad director, is Hitchcock, right? Like
Hitchcock's like OG dad director, or at least all the dad directors that I know are like, oh yeah, Hitchcock's the best. You know, I mean, I'm like Hitchcock's the best because there's that dad in me. There's two dads in all of us.
Yes, there are two dads in us,
and we got to feed the one that says Hitchcock's the man.
Exactly.
You want to hear something else that's funny?
Yeah.
You know who wrote this movie?
Fucking. What's his name? Agent fucking Avengers.
Coulson from the Marvel movies. Yeah. The guy from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. who's like, oh, we got to work on the name. And like, he's all sassy to Iron Man. That guy. Imagine that guy. He dies in one of them. Yeah. And then I think they bring him back.
He wrote this with another person, a lady. I didn't watch anything she had written. And honestly, I haven't watched anything he's written besides this.
No, I didn't know he wrote, but his name is Clark Gregg, and he wrote What Lies Beneath in 2000.
It's so weird.
You know what else is crazy about this movie? It took $100 million to make this movie.
I assume that's spent on Harrison Ford and Michelle Pfeiffer.
Even that though is insane.
Yeah.
Because it's mostly in one house.
The house is a set. So it turns out that they built the set multiple times. I think it had something to do with like they had to shoot in different different cities or something. There was something, and like I assume they had to do it at a specific time. But yeah, that is wild to me. It it's got to just be the cast, right? But it's still
the cast. It's Zemeckis. There are some ambitious shots. I will point out, but like nothing that I go. Well, based off of just the filmmaking, like it's mostly shot at, like you could knock this thing out if you wanted, in like 25 days in a house that you built.
I think you'd
have
to.
That needs maybe $15 million at this time. That doesn't need $100 million. Like ridiculous.
I think you'd knock off the ending because the ending's a little expensive, right?
Yeah, that's true. That is true.
Like you're saying, it's not
crazy ending.
Yeah, it's not enough. I don't know. I want to talk briefly about why this movie matters to me and kind of where this movie was in horror, because it's also like an interesting horror movie. This was before The Ring, and I think people forget what The Ring did. And this movie kind of points it out, which is that this was from the era. This is 2000, but like the 2000s and earlier in the 90s, we got a bunch of movies where it was a haunting, where the ghost was usually a young lady, and the reveal was always that she's revealing her killer. And I think you forget that because what makes The Ring significant, because they fake you out with that. They say like, oh, she was a victim, and then the kid's like, no, she was an asshole, and that's the twist.
Yeah.
I also want to point out that this is from an era where horror movies were mostly slashers and they were mostly teens. And
it was all teens, baby.
And I remember it really frustrating me at the time. And then seeing this, which is not only two adult actors, but big, famous, and good actors doing like a Hitchcock type thriller horror was really refreshing at the time.
It was also the star power just in those two names. Let's understand what that actually meant, like back then, if you were alive during that time and aware of those actors. They were such a big deal. It's Catwoman, it's Indiana Jones.
Yeah, Indiana Jones goes down on Catwoman in this movie.
Yes, he does. And it's $100 million movie. It made $300 million. That was back in a time when it was like, okay, so an actor, all you need is just to cast this person, whatever project they want to be in. If it at least makes sense on some level as a movie that people be like, oh, it's like a horror movie or something, they're gonna go. Like 300 million is huge still.
Yeah, it's a hell of a thing they made here
for something like this. Like it's not Indiana Jones numbers, but
I would put on the like in terms of like its significance to me. I think like Shutter Island. That's another one where it's like, holy shit, Scorsese is making a horror movie. Scorsese. God damn, yes, please. Like, because horror has always been in the slums. So like,
Yeah.
it's nice when like, oh, here's a bunch of like quote unquote big respectable actors and a big respectable director who are doing horror. It doesn't happen as much as it should. It should happen a lot more.
You just revealed, like, if you were a psychiatrist to John Carpenter, you just revealed most of his life.
Yeah.
You know, he's just like, why won't they take me seriously? What the fuck? I'm good at. I'm really good.
I'm extremely good. Yeah. And I think we've gotten better at it. Like I think of Hereditary with Toni Collette and like, where we will have actors that we're like, yeah, these are good actors and they're going to be in this horror movie. We're getting that.
Yeah, the late teens and now the early 20s of the 2000s era. Man, oh man, we're having a great horror, and it really shows like what the difference 24 years makes.
Oh yeah,
in terms of the types of movies that they're making and what constitutes a horror.
Right, like it's people don't realize how spoiled they are. Like this movie isn't like amazing. And so it's funny to watch it and think about in 2000 when I watched it and I was like, thank Christ, like this is such a breath of fresh air, and it's not even that good. Like the horror aspects are fine. There are I think there's some really good Hitchcockian, like the fucking
there's great
car
shots.
Mirror shot.
Yeah, the car mirror shot is a loud one. That's really pays off. The one where the camera goes through the floor, the hardwood floor.
Yep.
That one, I still don't know how he does it. He did it. I was like, how much CG is involved? How much compositing? Is it seen together, two shots, or they shoot it all on the green screen? There's like 8 different ways to shoot that. I don't know what combination of things they did because it looks fantastic.
That's some of the budget. There's a shot that will be stolen by Michael Bay for Bad Boys 2, where the camera zooms under the car and then the shoe falls. That is a shot from Bad Boys 2.
Yeah. That is also a very, very Zemeckis shot.
Yeah.
Like that is the spinning, especially with car stuff, the spinning out of time from Back to the Future.
Right.
License plate, kind of stuff. Like he loves things that are like whizzing past you, and we kind of trail with this like incidental kind of artifact of the speed of the other thing, like a shoe rolling after it's fallen off a car, I really think that's where
the budget went. It kind of reminds me of Fincher, where it's like the camera kind of goes anywhere he needs it to go. There's parts where like Harrison Ford's lying on the floor and we're under the floor looking at him.
Right.
And so like it's very clear that they had this set that they were constantly kind of deconstructing and moving shit around to get these shots.
Yeah, it does make sense that, and it's also Zemeckis. He makes movies that like every moment is kind of expensive and precious, so it does all add up.
Yeah.
Let's start combing through this thing.
Yeah, let's get inside
point
this
out some dad movies, and more specifically why we think this is a dad movie, because I think for some of the audience members they'd be like, I don't know, that's kind of a stretch. Hopefully by the end of this you'll be like, I see what these guys are saying.
Yeah.
So we call this segment Let's Get Inside This Dad. There's no music or any cue.
Why would there be?
I'm a stickler for structure. So still some broader thoughts. It's definitely older dad energy. Like,
it's boomer. It's boomer as hell. It's liberal boomer. They go boating and talk about antiquing.
And like the era and the time, like the age we're talking about is like sending your daughter to college age, empty nest age. And Harrison Ford is mostly at work throughout the first half of this movie.
Yes.
Other things that I think of when I think of just generally dad stuff, there's a lot of boats in this movies and parties and having nice things.
Yeah, there's dad bait. Should we talk about the broad premise of it? Because I have like the broad reason this is a dad horror movie, and then there's various dad bait throughout. I would like the way this is kind of the way like horror movies. I mean, horror movies aren't typically just for men or women, but the idea of like, a slasher movie has like, like the Jason movies has a lot of tits, right? It's like, look at this hot babe stuff, right? Mm-hmm. this is the same concepts for dads. And what I mean is there's like a scene where, and Michelle Pfeiffer, this is one of the most fuckable movies ever. Michelle Pfeiffer, there's a scene where she's like in her nightgown playing solitaire on the computer. And I was like, oh, that's the dad movie equivalent of like a hot babe playing Xbox. What do dads play? They play solitaire on the family computer. That's what they like to see.
Mom's in the wild playing solitaire.
Yeah, look at this hot mom playing solitaire.
Girl, is that a scrapbook?
Yeah. There's computer stuff. There's gadgets. Look at this cell phone. It's 2000. This cell phone is a
because
thing.
they're upper middle class to rich, and so they just have nice things in their lakeside home in Vermont.
Yep.
But yeah, Norman Spencer, Claire Spencer, Ford and Pfeiffer. And I mentioned they just sent their daughter to college, and we noticed that their neighbors, who are named Mary and Warren, all 4 names, by the way, just old ass energy.
Oh, yeah.
Warren and Norman.
Yeah, Norman I feel like might be a Norman Bates reference.
Right.
And then fucking it's Miranda Otto from Lord of the Rings as the neighbor, and fucking James Remar as her husband. Fucking Raiden in Mortal Kombat Annihilation.
Yeah, with the huge James Remar with like, if you look at him in this movie, his hair and his beard, he looks like Harrison Ford in The Fugitive before he shaves. Like he's this unkempt beast who needs to be tamed.
Yes.
And needs to tame himself.
Yeah, the first part of the movie, you think it's Rear Window, right? She has empty nest syndrome. She is watching this neighbor. The wife seems to be upset, and perhaps he's abusing her is the implication.
Yeah, volatile relationship at a lot of screaming
Spoilers.
matches.
This feels very dad film to me. Spoilers. She's just too emotional. Like that's really, she's just, his dick works so well that she loves him too much, and she's so emotional that it made her upset.
Which is, I've never heard of that. When she said that line, which she's like, "That have you ever loved anyone so much?" We're getting ahead of ourselves, but that is God.
The movie knows it because Michelle Pfeiffer reacts like, "What the fuck are you talking about?" Yeah, so the idea is she's a nut,
But that's the whole. I think that's the other thing is that a lot of this movie, from the perspective of like at least the male perspective of this movie, which is the secondary perspective because it's not protagonist, it's. My wife is crazy and spying on our poor neighbors. You follow Michelle Pfeiffer and you go, okay, she has legitimate reasons for all these thoughts.
Right.
But like what occupies also her thoughts is my husband thinks I'm just like hysterical, and that's a problem.
Right.
And it is. That becomes the main issue. But not at the start of the movie. At the start of the movie, we get a kind of sense of like we're in medias res with like this is how they are, and what they are is very horny.
Extremely. His dick works immediately.
Yeah, and her vag is like just popping off, like he's got that handsome old body on display for her. There's a lot of smooches and foreplay. They fool around like crazy. They have a sex off with their neighbors.
They sure do. His dick works so well that it's better than these younger neighbors. They also have a dog. Yeah. Am I correct that the dog is named Boomer?
I thought it was Cooper.
Cooper? Is it Cooper? Okay.
Yeah.
I just didn't write down the dog's name, and I was like, it's not Boomer, is it? That's way too on the nose.
Boomer. I don't know.
It's Cooper.
That would be excellent.
I'm almost certain it's Cooper.
Here's the thing with the sex off. Robert Zemeckis keeps us from who wins it, which is a goddamn shame.
This is when Indiana Jones goes down on Catwoman.
Yeah.
Again, very horny movie.
Very horny movie.
Very fuckable movie.
And a lot of mom stuff, too, because our perspective is from a mom. So we mentioned the scrapbooking and like making baskets. She brings baskets to people. And we find out she used to be an accomplished cellist, which I love this little undercurrent of the simplicity and the a lot of dad movies and these types of movies will try to form things in the binary as much as possible. Usually their main, problem or conflict in the story is gray, but it's like she's cellist. She loves music. He's a scientist. He loves science. It's like they form these weird binaries out of things where she's the creative type and he's like the more ordered, like business-like.
They're both wicked smart.
They're both wicked smart.
He's on his cool laptop, his little gadget in bed, and she's like reading a book. And he's a professor. Did we mention that? Yeah.
Yeah, well, he doesn't do much teaching. He runs a research grant for a drug that will numb you and not knock you unconscious, but like basically just make you unable to move, which is a metaphor for what's going to happen in this movie.
Yeah,
literally what happens in this movie.
Yeah, that's the sweatiest scene as she walks in and they're like explaining what it's doing.
Yeah, and you're like, I wonder if this is going to come up.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I want to get into spoilers a little bit because I think one of the powers of this movie is that as far as I know, and he will do this later in his career, but as far as I know, this is the first time that Harrison Ford plays a bad guy, a villain. And so I can't speak for everybody, but when I first watched this movie, as obvious as it was, I never assumed it was him because of the stunt casting.
Yep. I thought it was going to be a fake out. But
because I was like,
he's got to be Harrison Ford, though. Yeah, that's it. Here's the other thing is that superstars don't have that cachet anymore. That isn't necessarily a part. Like there are some, The Rock and Vin Diesel and their contractual obligation to win every punch fight, but like most actors actually want to do a variety of roles now.
Right.
I don't think it was in the contract necessarily of like Harrison Ford that he's always a hero. He just naturally gravitated toward it because it was always a smart business kind of career decision to be the leading man all the time. Yeah,
the closest we have still is Tom Cruise because even like Chris Evans, he did it in Knives Out. So it's like everybody kind of jumps into that. It's hard to kind of explain to young people the significance of this. Like I was watching this with Hannah and they were like, yeah, of course he's the villain. And it's like, yeah, but you don't understand. It's fucking Indiana Jones. It's John Kimball. Is his name John? It's fucking
Kimball's
definitely his.
Yeah.
I think
John.
I think John Kimball is actually. It doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
Point being that like it was kind of unheard of. He would later be a villain again in Ender's Game, but kind of.
It's even better, dude. It's Richard Kimball. It's Dick Kimball.
Dick Kimball. Yeah. I think John Kimball might be Kindergarten Cop. I think that might be Schwarzenegger's.
That's funny.
The point being that it's significant that he is bad in this. And so when we talk about this movie and all the really obvious things, just know that like I completely missed it. Like you see, like I saw this rat and I thought like, oh, I guess that's going to come up in some way. Surely Harrison Ford won't be involved though.
Yeah, surely that's not where this is all clearly leading.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's crazy what, 20 some years makes, just because I do think that switch from star power where it's just a little less involved in the making of the movie. Yeah. That's one thing that is like more an artifact of that time. It just feels like something that a more modern movie would do this, and it's not even with a second thought. They would just be like, yeah, and he just turns out to be the villain.
Right.
It's like, but you can't do that to Indiana Jones. In any case, we kind of get in this plot, this Rear Window plot that you mentioned, where Michelle Pfeiffer finds Mary crying. We get several jump scares early on that aren't really justifiable, but because they're like so phoned in, like the hairdryer. I guess that does come up later because like if the hairdryer, if the circuit in the bathroom doesn't really work, Harrison Ford will not survive, quote unquote, this suicide attempt later.
It's a setting up a fake out, which is kind of neat.
It's setting up a fake out. It's kind of actually great, but like it's a jump scare in the moment where you're like, who cares about if the electrics in this house are weird, right? And then the eye in the fence with Mary, unnecessary. No one is going to quickly put their eye right in the hole of a fence to scare you.
Yeah,
it just doesn't seem earned, but it shows that I wrote down just because it shows that genre is an aspect of the story as well. you know, like it's just an aspect. Zemeckis feels like he has something to prove with all these maneuvers. Like he's saying, like, I can do horror.
He's
what
making Hitchcock. It feels like that's the kind of shit that would, the eye shot at least is the kind of thing I feel like Hitchcock might even do more exaggerated, because that shot, they don't do music. They don't do jump scare music. I think.
Yeah, they do sound effect.
Yeah, they do a sound effect, but I think he's just trying to do Hitchcock throughout. I think he's trying to do a modernized Hitchcock, but like Alan Silvestri,
modern horror.
He's doing the music, and you know Zemeckis just said do Hitchcock. Like that's.
It's very clear that he even has audio, like soundtrack cues that are like, oh, that was Vertigo right there,
right?
You know. Finally, we get this like kind of theater of the round play that's happening for Michelle Pfeiffer and Harrison Ford, and they talk about the incident, and he's pretty cavalier about it. He's like, whatever you want to do, but I'm sure it's fine. And Michelle Pfeiffer is pretty determined that something's wrong over there for obvious reasons, because she's like freaking out. So she finds an excuse, makes a basket, and then the next morning finds that they're not home. That night, Michelle Pfeiffer watches Warren pack what looks to be clearly a body into the trunk of his car, which they never really explain.
No, guys, sometimes dads have to bury things.
Sometimes they may look like bodies.
Yeah.
But when she tells this to Harrison Ford, or like Harrison Ford runs over to the window, there's literally nothing there. Like he got in the car and drove away. Like it's insane the level that they're gaslighting Michelle Pfeiffer throughout this movie, where it's just like, we want the audience to think that Michelle Pfeiffer might be crazy.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a fake out that they don't really cash in to, but they always want it kind of dangling over you, you know? Like so many dads.
Many dads.
So yeah, spooky stuff starts happening in the house itself, which is a funny pivot to me.
Yeah, the first spooky thing that happens is very dad to me, is that the hinges on the doors aren't working. You gotta tighten those hinges, dads. Like that's like dads watching. I was thinking like, oh yeah, you gotta screw those hinges.
Those
in.
hinges need to be. Yeah.
I
can see right there. You got a problem.
Yeah. Again, there's a lot of little dad baits they're putting out.
Yeah, so doors open, windows get open. It's mostly stuff being open that shouldn't be open. Their dog doesn't trust the lake.
Yeah.
Which is an awesome one. Yeah, and it's because there's an indication that there's some kind of presence in the house. Also, she sees a woman's face in the lake, but it's there. It's actually really well done because it's there and it's gone.
It reminds me of Hereditary.
It's very subtle.
It's like if you're watching and maybe like if there's like your TV has glare on it or like you're not paying attention, you might miss it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But it's just enough where you go like, yeah, no, that's definitely a lady under the water. And then and I love this because we're like 20 minutes in, we're just having dinner parties. I think we have like 2 dinner parties within 30 minutes.
Yes.
Double dates.
There's a
men talking. Yeah.
Oh, there's a really good clue in this.
Oh, yeah.
Because they do a cross chatter scene, which is one of those things that movies don't do as much anymore. Like Spielberg used to do it a little bit. They have a dinner date. They run into they have a date with a colleague, and then that colleague, Michelle Pfeiffer, happens to know his girlfriend or fiance or wife, and they do a thing where the 2 women are talking and the 2 men are talking, and it's cross chatter, so you might miss it. But what the 2 men are saying is that the guy tells Harrison Ford that one of their colleagues got in trouble for stalking a student, and Harrison Ford replies with, "Wow, they don't screw around with stuff like that anymore, do they?" He doesn't say, "Oh my God, I can't believe he's a monster." He's mad. He goes, he's shocked at the school punishing him.
Down.
Yeah, which is a huge red
away
flag.
With that shit forever if you wanted to back in the day.
It's great because they do it with cross chatter, so you might miss it again. But
and then
it's
the
first sign that he's a dirtbag.
Yeah, so you get that dirtbag, and then I also love that they do another subtle dirtbag thing, which is more of just like toxic relationship, but it seems it's not very pronounced. It doesn't seem like it'd be that toxic at first, but then the more you dig to it, you go, that's just cruel, which is at the end of the evening, Harrison Ford throws her under the bus unprompted by just telling the other two, oh yeah, she thinks like our house is haunted.
Right. It's like a cute, oh, look at my wife being into crystals and shit. Yeah.
Having lady problems. And he even makes a joke about, it's my dad, which is like, also cavalier with death, kind of shows that he's just like, because that happened a year ago, more or less.
He also makes it about himself.
Yeah. So it's like a cocktail of misogyny. It's kind of great.
It's also a very dad movie thing. Like
it's very with the boys, you gotta make jokes with the boys, right, boys? Those ladies, am I right? In any case, a framed article back at home, meanwhile, back at the, mansion.
I think it's safe to call it a mansion.
There is it comes up 80 times. It's like the ghost literally is like, hey, man, check out this fucking picture.
I'm trying so hard, lady.
I've knocked it over like 8 times, Michelle Pfeiffer. And it's a framed article about Norman. And it falls off the desk and shatters, leading Claire to discover an odd key in a vent, which is just like escape room bullshit. But it's stuff I think everyone can fall in love with, where you're like, ooh, a puzzle,
Yeah.
And she finds, later she finds her bathtub mysteriously filled and sees another woman's reflection in the water. Also really cool effect, where you're like, oh shit, that's a different human, just for literally like 4 frames.
Again, it's one of those things that like, we do it more now, but at the time it was like, oh, good, good idea.
Kind of cool idea. Just a little reflection play. Harrison Ford insists she goes to a psychiatrist because she like freaks out. She's like, I'm literally seeing shit in this house.
She goes to fucking Miles Dyson, Joe Morton, which I feel like his dad movie. Like, look, it's Miles Dyson.
Yeah, exactly. And he's judging her, even though he's not. She feels judged. So she also goes to her mystic friend, Jody, who they hold like a failed seance.
Yeah.
It's just all very spooky. Nothing really happens from it. Doors open, but it could have been the dog. It could have been the wind. And she doesn't want Harrison Ford to know, because she's like, he's starting to think that I'm crazy and I don't want any of that shit, because I don't want to deal with this nonsense. Which is like, okay, there's something fundamentally wrong with the way in which they perceive each other in this relationship.
Right.
That's a cue. We also get more references to this kind of bad car accident. Something crazy happened a year ago, but we don't know any details yet. It's kind of because they're going to reveal later that she has stifled kind of the memory of it. So narratively, what the filmmakers are doing is doing the same thing to us, making it like a reveal as opposed to like details that someone would know about their life. We want it to feel like we don't understand. Harrison Ford is at one point, upping the toxicity. Like, are you acting out because I've been at work so much? Which is also a dad thing, dad opinion, right? Is this because I'm not home enough? It's just very funny, toxic dad stuff. And I don't think we're saying that all dads are this. I think it's like the fears. It's a horror movie, right? It's the fears that we have of dads.
If we get into the broad scope of it, imagine like compare this to something like Heat, where we see it from the other perspective, where they go home to their wives miserable because they're working too much. But we know as the audience, well, what they're doing is worth it. We're seeing it from the flip. So like what makes this a dad horror movie to me is a lot of the idea that it's taking the tropes we've been talking about and subverting it in a bad way.
Yeah.
And we can get more and more into that. Yeah. I have a lot of that.
We'll when those moments become relevant. But just getting right through it, she finds bathtub filled again. It's like knocking over that little portrait and filling up the bathtub.
The ghost is like,
that's the bags.
Yeah. By the end, the ghost basically goes, "I'll do it." That's how this movie ends. The ghost,
basically,
right,
the ghost is like, "You are fucking this up. Yeah. Let me take it from here." We get general spooky 2000 stuff. There's a message in a steamy mirror. Her computer inexplicably types the initials MEF, which you're like, Well, we know that Mary's last name is Freer, right? Or something Fuhrer.
Yeah.
So MF, that could be the lady next door. Maybe she's dead. Twist, once she's convinced absolutely that Warren killed Mary and she's being haunted by Mary's ghost, she goes to confront Warren, screams at him in public, like, I know what you did, you murdering son of a bitch. And Mary just walks out from the bathroom alive and well. So within the first 30 minutes, we're like, basically the arc of Michelle Pfeiffer might be crazy. Yes, that's the answer. But since there's plenty of movie to go, that's not the first twist we got. We get more parties and work functions. I love that we design a sneaky thing that this movie does is the design of the movie. The landscape from Michelle Pfeiffer is basically one that she does not like truly occupy. It's not her space.
Yeah.
These aren't her people. These aren't her friends. This isn't her house. Everything was inherited. The only thing that we get the feeling that she has ownership of is the cello, which is no longer in our life anymore.
Right.
That's just kind of a cool way in which they did that.
Yeah, she put everything, her career ambitions on the side to raise her daughter, and basically now she just feels like another appliance in the house. Kind of.
Exactly. Yeah. Which they don't have a scene about, but it's just when you start stacking up everything, you go, oh, wow. It really makes me feel like all the Michelle Pfeiffer scenes, I don't belong here. She doesn't belong here.
Right.
And the reason is because, it doesn't feel right. She doesn't have ownership. She doesn't love anything here.
And again, they don't lean into it, but there's this idea of like, he's the master of this world. Everybody thinks he's a genius. Like this is, all these people love him. She's just his wife.
Common... It's par for the course for horror movies, because to me, what makes a horror movie work is that the monster is master of the environment. In Alien, in the ship, he could come out of the fucking wall, out of the ceiling. Point is, you're fucked.
Yeah, and spoilers.
And that's Harrison Ford is the fucking alien.
But by the end of this movie, I would argue he is very similar in how he moves around. He's like, he's literally bursting out of windows like, and it's like, oh,
so
fuck.
Good. It's so good. So after this like big event, because it's very public and it's very embarrassing, obviously Harrison Ford's a little peeved about it. And at this function, or earlier at this function, she apparently disappeared like a year ago. Like she
crashed her car. They know that
she crashed her car, and like she no one knew where she was for a bit, and then she like stifled that trauma as well. And Michelle Pfeiffer doesn't know like what I don't remember anything about that event. So it's like, okay, so again, a year ago, some night, something crazy happened. And I love Harrison Ford at this point is like, because she's acting out like, Claire, stop it, enough. Just doing this Harrison Ford, like, if had it up to here with you now at this point. And so, that's where we're at. She's not going to listen. So what she does is she tracks down this MEF that she finds, because she's on the back of Norman's article. She finds a story about a missing
woman. The thing
woman
that kept breaking, it's on the other side of that picture. That was so like, finally she figures out what the ghost wanted.
And it's this other woman who looks like the ghost. So she's like, okay, there it is. So it's this Madison Elizabeth Frank lady. She disappeared a year ago as well. So she tells Harrison Ford, he's like, enough. And then she tracks down Madison's mother and visits her daughter's bedroom. And she steals some of her hair, which is crazy, because at the same time she got a witch book from her friend Jody. So like, she's definitely like, I'm going to take this hair and do a little spell.
Yeah,
right?
this is
that's the only justification. Otherwise, it's just the creepiest thing I've ever seen.
This is the underlying dad cautionary tale, which is, listen, if you spend too much time out of your home and you don't tend to your wife, she's gonna get into witchcraft. That's just gonna happen.
She's gonna.
This is why we had to burn a bunch of them. Like you gotta be careful, because then they're gonna start blaming you for all sorts of things.
And they're just gonna get hysterical.
Yeah.
Man, oh man. Yeah. And while she's at the daughter or the Madison's mother's house, she does notice a photo of her, and we get a few things about her that are then going to become like icons of the ghost, which is she has this unusual necklace. It's not that unusual, but it's just like
it's not great.
Note.
Yeah.
I'm not judging the necklace. I'm just like, it's not like our yeah. It's not the Hope Diamond over here.
Yeah.
But she's also got crazy green eyes. So Michelle Pfeiffer does a little spell, and we see in the mirror that her eyes are now green.
She gets possessed.
So she's getting possessed by the ghost. And guess what the ghost does? The ghost is super horned up for some good old Ford horsepower.
I love this scene because it's Harrison Ford. I love his attitude because he comes home and she's like she's basically like, there's no Dana, there's only Zool at him. And Harrison Ford has a moment that I think a lot of men have gone through, which is like, I think this sex is going to be really weird, but I'm going to kind of yes and it and see where this goes. Where he's like, I'm a little creeped out right now, but I think there's sex that will happen.
I think sex is going to happen.
Yeah, I'm not sure what kind of sex, but it's going to be real
maybe
weird
it'll
sex.
be crazy. Maybe it'll be awesome.
Right, because he says
there's always that opportunity.
Right, he says like, I take it you forgave me, and she's like, not exactly. So he knows it's like mad sex, and she's like role playing, and so he's just like, I'm gonna try to figure out whatever this is, you know.
Yeah, and we get the like the trailer line where she's like, I think she suspects something. She's like, who? And he's like, who? And she's like, your wife.
And they very subtly change her face in that shot.
That shot
which
is great.
Zemeckis loves that. Remember Contact? They do that shit in Contact. And so like
a shimmer, like it's like just a few frames.
Yep.
You know?
And that's when Harrison Ford's like, yeah, it's not worth the sex, basically.
She is actually possessed. Which
we
he
also
does kind of open up to. He kind of realizes, okay, now we need to nip this in the bud, right?
We also see a shot that I just, it's plot related, and I want to point it out because it's I love this type of horror. She looks over and sees herself in the mirror walking in. And it's treated like this. The music, it's a genuinely,
it's like Gerald's Game.
Yeah, it's a very creepy fucking shot. Because of the music and because they treat her like her own self, seeing her own self is like some sort of phantom. And it's also a revelation, right? Which is that she now knows what she forgot with the car accident.
Yeah, she realizes she suppressed that memory when she found out about Harrison Ford sleeping with this Madison woman who is a student of his. And so she is like, fuck, I totally forgot about all that shit. She goes to her medium friend who confides that she also knew about it. And that's crazy because she didn't tell Michelle Pfeiffer. She's like, first off, I thought you were just playing an elaborate game where I guess we're just lying to you. You forgot that? I guess that's just a convenient thing. So she never talked about it. But also the night of the accident, Harrison Ford was so distraught. So she took that to mean she believed he was so sorry. Like he had a moment where he was like, my wife found out about the affair and almost killed herself. I'm such a horrible human being. I have to change my life now. And she was like, saw that and was like, oh, he's actually a good guy. Then they just had a horrible night. And I'm never going to talk about this ever again. So that's why I didn't tell you, best friend. Yeah,
because it's almost implied like she sort of thought they had worked it out or something. She was in the dark, but she also mentions that she went to this hippie ass Vermont type town and saw Harrison and this woman. That's how she found out. She saw him and this woman.
She knew because she saw them at a like boutique buying that necklace, baby.
Yeah.
And having, sexy times. Well, actually, they were screaming at each other because she actually caught the relationship when he was trying to shut it down.
Right.
Claire finds Norman just unconscious in the tub, which he assures her was an accident, not like a suicide attempt.
And this is where we get the line from Harrison Ford, my favorite Harrison Ford line. Are you saying I was attacked by a ghost? It's such a good line.
It's so good. And you just imagine his finger is up at that moment.
Yeah.
She tells her, look, Madison was unstable a year ago, confronted me at home, and I ended the affair. I didn't kill her. And then he starts acting strange, which I thought was an interesting maneuver from a screenwriting perspective. It's like a little over the top. He keeps trying to get Michelle Pfeiffer to say things that implies like, are you trying to reprogram her or gaslight her?
Right.
Like at one point he repeats a few times, just say it's not your fault. It's like he's trying to treat her like a victim, basically. And
he keeps moving the goalpost too, where it's like at first like, she disappeared. I had an affair and she disappeared.
Harrison Ford actually has a scene where he calls a ghost scientist.
Oh, yeah.
It gets interrupted, but it means that he actually kind of believes like there is a supernatural element to it that he has seen. I think that seeing his wife shimmer into a different person while they're boning it probably does that to you, but it's just funny to me that incidentally, not that we needed this scene, he's just like, oh, by the way, is there a ghost scientist that I can talk to? And that's all interrupted because standing in the dock with Madison's hair once again, it's like a totem, it means that she's possessed, I think. Claire jumps / is pulled into the lake by something and dragged down to the bottom to a jewelry box that's matching Madison's necklace, and Norman jumps in after her. Harrison Ford saves her, which would be awesome.
Yeah. Again, the ghost is like trying so hard.
It's like, look here, what do I have to fucking do? And they burn the lock of hair, and Michelle Pfeiffer says, oh, I feel like the ghost is gone. It's over.
Right.
Everything's great for
Which
a
is
second.
cute for the movie to make. Like, the movie doesn't even pretend to fake us out, because
it just has a scene, and then next scene is just like, back to business as usual.
Yeah.
Because Claire's suspicions kind of return when Norman said, like, she confronts him about the cafe, and this is the scene you're talking about, I believe.
Yeah, she mentions like, oh, we should go antiquing. I heard about this place. Have you been there? And he goes, no.
No.
Yeah. And so she knows he's lying.
It's like, bitch, I saw that necklace, and I heard you were at this cafe. I know exactly where you've been in the last year.
Right.
And so she jumps in the water, gets the box from the lake, and unlocks it with the key from Norman's office. So we get a little puzzle. We get a little national treasure thing going on. And she finds the Madison's necklace inside, which is bizarre. Why would that... I guess he just like threw it out, but it's funny.
He did a bad job at crime.
He did a bad job, but he like intentionally created a treasure, like unintentionally.
So yeah, the reveal is like, okay, she didn't disappear. She did kill herself. Yes, here in the house, and I covered up her suicide, which I shouldn't have done. And
I shouldn't have lied to you. I'm going to confess if that's what you want. He calls the police, but Claire immediately discovers he dialed 411 instead of 911.
Yeah.
And he jumps out at her like a fucking, monster.
Yeah, this is where we get mask
paralyzes
off.
her with the halothane, which I think is the name of the thing he was developing, right? It's basically... Yeah. I don't know why... It's just chloroform. I guess it's not just that knocks you out.
No, this is like the idea is you stay aware.
Looking around.
Yeah, but you're paralyzed. Yeah, basically they keep giving Harrison Ford these moments of like, because like a lot of horror movies, you could accept the idea of like, okay, he's a piece of shit, but he's not a murderer, and that's why they're getting haunted. So they keep elevating it, and now we're mask off, which is like,
yeah.
He starts revealing some things to her, like one that he completely faked getting electrocuted, which is a wild gambit. But I get it. He's been gaslighting her, right?
Yeah, he's taking temperature of like how far is this still working? Is my lie that I did a year ago still taking stock? You know, because he's crazy,
and this is the real horror here is learning that Harrison Ford, he's not just evil. He's a coward. He has no honor. He's going to drown her. And then he says, like, I'm going to use this to get closer to our daughter. And then again, he faked an injury. This isn't like, oh, I'm a bad guy, but I have honor. You know, like that's a dad movie trope,
he
right?
wants it all to work out, but when it doesn't, he cries and decides that I'm going to
he's more like
ruin your life in order to make it feel like I didn't lose.
Yeah, he's more like Kurt Russell in Death Proof, which is one of those things. I knew people who loved Kurt Russell who was just like, I was very upset by that portrayal. It's
right.
Like,
no, but it's great. It's fantastic.
It's fantastic.
Because it shows kind of like a more, I would say, commonplace kind of attitude about, you know, villainous moments or villainous choices. Because people aren't villains. It's not as simple as that.
Right.
But they make weird choices like this, and it's like, oh, it's because you're
little
kind
weasels.
of
They're little cowards. You know, like
you're a little coward. You're not a monster, truly.
Right. There's no evil genius.
Yeah,
really.
Exactly. You're not like, this gives me pleasure, I mean to say. But yeah, we get basically, so all this basically happened because Madison was like, I'm going to expose our affair to the dean and ruin your life, blow it all up. And so Claire is now paralyzed, and she's starting to come out of it. It's not like a very effective, I mean, it's an effective, but like not long lasting drug. And Norman places her in the bathtub, fills it with water to stage her suicide. And then when he notices that she has a necklace and grabs the necklace from Claire's neck, her face like contorts into Madison's dead corpse, and that freaks Harrison Ford fuck off.
He really fucks up.
It would.
Yeah.
And he smashes his head on the sink, and he is out cold for a minute.
This is one of those funny injuries to me, because then later he like had crawled a ways and still nothing.
Yeah, like he is fucked up, dude.
Yeah,
He's so fucked.
He
kind of it's clear there's a story just by the blood that he's left around the house that he stumbled around and did not know where he was.
Right.
like for a while.
All she has to do really is wait.
Just wait or leave. Just like he shouldn't be able to do what he eventually does.
No, but like
there's this cool game that we have where as the water level kind of rises, she's recovers enough of her, you know, her feet and her hands to like MacGyver a turn off the faucet and unplug the drain. So she almost dies of drowning, but in the last moment she gets she solves the puzzle. Which we love.
Yes, we do love
and
it.
It's a very cool sequence. But she gets out. There's a little cat and mouse because it's like, where's Norman? Because his body isn't there where it should be. And she finds him fucking just
where's
on
Norman?
the ground.
Oh, there he is.
He's just on the ground, knocked unconscious again, I guess. But she kind of climbs, tries to grabs his phone and like fucking bails out the front door.
She grabs the
cell phone.
We got a Sam Raimi shot.
where he opens his eyes and he's like, oh, I'm actually alive, but it wasn't alive when she was just here, just for dramatic effect.
Right.
And we get a cool another shot where it's just like everything's through a rear view window. And then we get a reveal, like you're right. He is like a
Jason
monster.
Voorhees in this, yeah.
Yeah, he's Jason Voorhees. Because it's like, where the fuck is he? And you just see artifacts of like, you know, there's a small porch swing, and it's like slightly
he's
moving.
Like
the doors
slithering
open
around.
Yeah, he's just like fast as fuck. Even though that makes no sense because he's clearly so hurt that he is concussed and unsure of if he can remain conscious.
I think
for 5 minutes.
If he didn't die at the end of the next scene, he would have probably died soon after. Still,
yeah.
I think this is like all the strength in his body for one last blast. Before he dies. Yeah.
Yeah. So she drives away in the truck. It's the one with the boat on it, and he has gotten on the back of the boat and climbs his way to the bed of the truck, and he attacks her by using like a ball peen hammer to shoot out the window, basically. And they crash in the lake, and that dislodges Madison's car, which is still down there, and her body floats up. And Norman, while he's trying to drown Claire and like choking her out, the dead body grabs Norman, allowing for her to escape.
I love his little shush when he shushes her.
Yeah,
and,
shush.
Yeah.
It's like, we're underwater, dude. And Norman drowns. She escapes. The Madison's ghost / corpse drifts away. And then we get an epilogue scene because you kind of, I guess, need one. I don't really think you needed this scene, but she puts a rose on Madison's grave.
Well, I want to talk about that scene a little bit, but and then presumably at some point their daughter calls from college, like, so I've been gone a week. What I miss? And her mom will be like, "Oh, I have so much to tell you.
Yeah, let's chat.
Yeah,
you have like 5 minutes.
So you remember your dad?
Yeah, you remember a year ago.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's great.
Yeah, that's the movie. I want to talk. Let's
talk about daddiness.
Yes. Okay.
Let's go to the smoking room.
All right, we're at the smoking room. I had to hold back a lot to try to just get us through it because there's a lot of...
it's kind of like there's a weave the tapestry for us, because I do think that there's a few things that are coming out. There's also, I want to open it up by saying that I think that there is a slightly two different frameworks that it still has aspects that work, which is, if you see her as a dad, Michelle Pfeiffer, there is a lot of energy in the, kind of theories that we've been building, that it's very much of dad movie in a lot of senses. It's just maybe not as much as like a Wall Street or something like that. But then there's the thing that I think you're about to talk about, which is how it's kind of a counteract, like it's a dad movie in the way that it's what it's trying to subvert.
Yeah, I mean, what is a horror film? It's usually a subversion of our comforts, right? You take things that, you take a movie like Jaws, where it's like everybody loves swimming. Let's put a shark in that water and make something like the ocean scary for you. Let's point out the unknown of this thing that a lot of people are comfortable with. So I think this is a horror movie in the sense that you take the starting of a dad movie. You take a movie where it goes, hey guys, hey dads, here's Harrison Ford and Michelle Pfeiffer. Don't you want to see Harrison Ford plow Michelle Pfeiffer? Look at him. He's a big, cool daddy. He is the daddy. He's America's daddy. And we're going to make him not just evil, but dishonorable, but a weasel, but evil in the worst ways. And it taps into still all the tropes. His dick works, but in a bad way.
And her vag works.
Yep. Yeah. But his dick got him in trouble. And like,
his dick got her in trouble.
It starts with this very basic, like that idea of, oh man, they're really cracking down on this. This, I think it's tapping into the idea that dads have secrets. Yeah. Dads have secrets, and sometimes those secrets are just their porn folder on their computer. Sometimes they had to kill a student. Who knows? But like this killing a student is a symbolism of like sexual shame, right? And like I'm not saying that
I see
dads. I'm not saying that we're supposed to sympathize with Harrison Ford in any way, but I think that Harrison Ford's struggle is about a man who. It's sort of Wall Street, where we talk about this idea of like dads are concerned about money, but not at the cost of other dads, of what people did. And so there's this idea,
dad code. Yeah.
Exactly. And they kind of act like this. Harrison Ford is a man who doesn't understand that code, this so-called bro code, this idea of like, oh, you don't talk about that stuff. You have to show reverence and honor. He has a higher calling. They're using all that stuff to show him doing a bad thing in that name.
Because the reverence for the system in the end is also kind of a gray situation depending on the movie. But as long as it feels like the dad is doing the right thing.
Exactly.
And that is what his villainy comes from. He occupies his thoughts with literally saying at one point, what should I have done? Ruin everything? Our lives, our marriage? Let this woman ruin that? And it's like, yeah, no, you're asking the right question, which is what's the right thing, but your answer is selfish and wrong. Like you're choosing the wrong thing.
Objectively so. So like they're using that dad honor to show a dad who has lost his way. And it's almost like a good sneaky cautionary tale for dads, because I think that like while dads may not have, they're not pieces of shit, they might have like personal shame in their life. Again, it's probably a lot smaller. And so like tapping into that feeling and tapping into like, like working too much, your wife is going to start finding your shame.
Yeah. Exactly.
And then
you haven't taken care of the household, which is a part of what the dad does. And they fear not doing that.
And using the idea of like, I just wanted to do the right thing, and he's doing something horrifying. It's subverting the whole dad.
There's two other tropes that I also noticed that, like, in terms of subversion, I was like, oh, that's kind of clever. One of the obvious ones is that, like, we talk about a lot the idea of just plowing ahead and staying the course. And usually it's ridiculed, but it's actually like Master and Commander and shit like that. Sometimes it's just straight up, just do your job, just do your fucking job, man.
And Master Commander, he is wrong, and they don't.
The villainous streak in this movie is Harrison Ford's commitment to just stay the course, just plow ahead.
Yes,
so that's one thing. And then the other thing I thought that was interesting is that we get this kind of, we mentioned it, kind of called a libertarian ethos, this undermining of authority, or like feeling of being restricted by authority. And so you take from that authority, you undermine that authority. That is dad kind of fantasy, right?
Right.
What's awesome is in this movie, Michelle Pfeiffer is doing that to the villain, to Harrison Ford, who now has become the authority. So even though he's the daddy, in some instances we go like, okay, that's a dad thing. That's why he exists in the story. Functionally, structurally, in terms of like, if you just look at these things as like motifs, he is the authority figure in which dads strive to knock out, which that's just basic storytelling more than anything.
Yeah.
It doesn't make it a dad movie just because Michelle Pfeiffer is like the underdog, right? But it's just one of those things where it's just like, that's something that all dads stand behind.
Oh yeah, she's taking on qualities. Like, again, she's clever, she's underestimated, but it's that slow realization of like, yeah, we're taking the codes. Like, I guarantee there are dad movies we might have already watched where one of the dudes is like cheating on his wife and the other dude is like, nah, I won't say anything. Like that idea of like the bro code where it's like, it's still bad, but they won't. Like, they're using those ideas and they're showing like, oh, it's actually very sinister. This code. We're taking all the stay the course mentality and showing how it's bad. And so like but I think that the moment that twists it, the moment that makes you finally go like, he's not the daddy, is he? Is when he has no honor, when he puts her in the bathtub, reveals that he faked things, that he's a liar, that he's a weasel. Daddies don't like weasels. And so, like, it's that horror of, like, what if Harrison Ford was the weasel? That's horrifying.
That's horrifying.
And now we're rooting.
Not in my world, man.
Exactly. And while we're already rooting for her, but now, she takes the place. It's like, no, she's the daddy. She's the one with guile, who's underestimated, who's paralyzed. She's going to go from paralyzed to drowning this man. With the help of a ghost.
With the help of a ghost who definitely did everything.
Yeah. Yes.
Just here is the
definitely did everything
/ manual to killing your husband who deserves it, who you didn't know before because you blocked it out. That's very strange.
Yeah. There's by the way, the gadgets are cool. I just want to flag that because in the
boats.
Yep. Boats in 2000, the computer solitaire, that's where it was at. Dick's working, we've talked about. But again, it's subverting that. His dick worked too good. So good that it got him in trouble.
He was using it. He had wandering dick syndrome. Linear storytelling is also one of those like random artifacts that we just kind of It's just something that I've noticed. Here's a funny one. Even though it's not used in the same way that it's often used in a dad movie, women are in peril.
Yes, I put that down.
/ dead.
They sure are in peril in this one.
Yeah, even though I would say that that's not a subversion, it's just used differently by most dad movies, which is just like they're usually a signal of the cost. The cost of, if you could have been a better dad, you could have saved them.
I mean,
think of The Fugitive with his wife.
They're still using it technically because that woman who is the ghost is basically that, right? It represents his failure.
And she's righting a wrong. So she is saving the legacy of a woman, even though she couldn't save her actual life. Yeah. So yeah, there is a little bit of that streak, but it's just funny. Because also Michelle Pfeiffer's in peril the whole movie.
I think what it comes down to is that like dad films have bad dads in them.
Yes.
What makes it a horror twist is that you think you're watching Robin Hood when he's actually the sheriff of Nottingham, right? Mm-hmm. Like he's actually Weasley Alan Rickman.
Yes.
And so, I think that sums it up in my head of like what this is. And
it sums it up to me too. I really do think I am kind of convinced that it operates in the same space as dad movies, and it just shows how kind of emblematic this type of filmmaking, this type of thinking, the crafting of these stories, saying like this is kind of the formula, was so dominant in the 90s and early 2000s. I mean, it's because there's been many types of dad movies. Like one could argue that, in the 50s, the Western was the archetypal dad film. You'd probably be right with that argument. But like this particular era, the formative years for Dave and I, this is what they were saying about what you meant to be a dad. And I think this movie does solidify that.
It's similar to The Shining a little bit, because The Shining also has this dad idea. He's trying to provide for his family. He's trying to be a father, and he fails. It's watching this guy fail to live up to what dad films are acting like is what makes an honorable dad. It's watching a dad fail as a dad. In a horrific way, not in a way where you feel bad for him. This is mostly about it's a gaslighting film. It's about toxic masculinity. It doesn't have to be seen purely as a dad film by any measure, but it's a movie that definitely says, hey dads, psst, come over here. Harrison Ford's here. Come on, come watch this. And then it twists that. It twists what your expectation is for seeing Harrison Ford in a movie, representing everything that is honorable about dads, playing a very dishonorable dad. And that's horrifying.
Yeah. And it's also, when you think about what he was making, Zemeckis was making at this time too, with Castaway. It's so funny that Castaway is a story about like, what if you just took a dad out of his natural state and put him... And his dad, and put him in this, like he's isolated, and like so when the scenes when he like comes back home, he's like, I made it, I lived, and she's like, I moved the fuck on, like there's that whole. These are like dad. You have the dad fantasy movie, the Robin Hoods and whatnots, the Fugitives, and you have the like what dads fear,
the dad tragedies. Dad tragedies. That doesn't work as well.
And the folly of dad as a thinking, and also, cautionary tales to tell us how to be morally, how to be with our family, what to say, what to do.
And this is a
how
cautionary
we respond
tale
to authority, etc., etc.
Because he rejects, that's the thing. So many dad movies have this same dilemma, which is that you got to have a code, right? And if you do something wrong, you go to jail for it. Fucking the end of Wall Street, he still goes to jail. The reverence for the system. And so what we have here is Harrison Ford didn't handle this situation correctly, killed this young lady, and then didn't face the music. So it's these levels of dishonor, right? Which is like he cheated, he was a bad dad, then he handled it in a horrifying way by killing this woman. That's the second sin, and then he tried to get away with it, which is the third sin. the dishonor, the true dishonor.
The true, the stomping on legacy, etc.
Yeah.
But hey, he still died in a car, which is pretty cool.
Which is pretty cool. Yeah.
Because Dad loves cars.
Dads love cars.
Planes, trains, boats, driving around with the boys.
Dying in them. Yeah.
Dying in
Drowned
them.
by a ghost.
With the boys.
Yep.
Yep. Yep. Oh, the last one I wanted. There's a thing about, and it's kind of that vigilantism streak, like the challenging authority and like what would you do. But there's another thing like we see sometimes with Fugitive, like what usually our main character in a dad type movie, it's usually like the world doesn't believe you.
Yes. Yeah.
That happens so often.
Yeah.
Enough like it's not in Wall Street. It's not really in Robin Hood.
No, but it's definitely in this where it's like she's underestimated.
But it's
everybody's
in a lot of them.
telling
it's
her
in
you're
310
nuts.
to Yuma,
Yeah.
where it's like everyone is like, you suck, Christian Bale, and he's like, little do they know that I'm actually a secret hero.
I think, by the way, I think there's a lot of dad films starring women, specifically Ashley Judd. Like I think
solving crimes.
Oh yeah, because you look at those, they always throw in a dad, meaning they'll be like, here's Morgan Freeman on the side to make dads, because dads are watching those movies and they all kind of are framed of this. Look at this broad, she's underestimated. Everybody's laughing at her and she's gonna fucking rue the day, or they're gonna rue the day rather, and she's gonna make them. So like dads love that, and dads like they don't need the movie to star another dad. They really don't. They just need those dad elements. And so I think we're going to find, like, once we get into like crime thriller, we're going to get some Ashley Judd, like I think of The Bone Collector with Angelina Jolie, where that's, we give.
And Denzel Washington.
Yeah, they throw in
High
Denzel.
Crimes, Kiss the Girls are both Ashley Judd and Morgan Freeman.
Yeah, dads love Ashley Judd. I mean, who doesn't, Yeah. But like, I would argue those movies are more watched than dads than anything else, which is, interesting.
Fucking Kiss the Girls, man. Bone Collector. Yeah. Yeah, for some reason there was a lot. But isn't that a part of the
I mean, this is
Alex
all to say that
shit?
Not The Bone Collector.
Not The Bone Collector.
No, but the other ones. But again, those Alex Cross is more the main character, but I was thinking like, what's that one fucking Double Jeopardy? Is that what it's called?
Ashley Judd's in Double Jeopardy, yeah.
There's a few where like she's the main character, but also it's still a dad film.
Mm-hmm.
And likewise, because dads like watching, hot ladies. Like Michelle Pfeiffer in this, she's banging. Everybody's banging in this. And so it's like, that's all to say that dads don't need to see a dad as the main character doing the dad stuff.
Yeah.
And so, she is doing a lot of dad stuff in this, but it's also very loud that she's fighting a bad dad.
Right. Exactly. It's almost like it's the perfect marriage between like a horror movie, which has the standard of having like a scream queen or just a female character that is in trouble and survives at the end.
Right.
And then also dad movie, which is the ethos of dads.
Yeah, what if
the pathos of dad?
It's basically like, what if there's a slasher, but instead of a Jason Hockey mask, it's a dad. He's wearing a dad. That's what it is.
What lies beneath.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was excellent. I think we did it, right? Is there anything else you want to say about What Lies Beneath?
No, I just, hit us up for where you want to send the Pulitzer. For this one.
Was brave. I think everyone is convinced. I can't think of how someone could have listened to this podcast and be like, I don't actually think that this is a dad movie.
No, this is a dad movie.
I think that person doesn't exist. And if they did exist, I don't know
they're evil.
Why they think they would be right.
Yeah, they're
or
evil.
Why they should be alive, frankly.
They're morally evil, yeah.
Dubious at best.
Mm-hmm.
Possibly a supervillain.
Yeah.
Possibly needs to be taken out.
Yeah.
I'm just jazzing, dude. These are just thoughts I have.
Yeah, they're good thoughts.
Thanks, man. And
You're
you have
welcome.
good thoughts too.
Thank
you for podcasting. Is there any good plugs you want to shout out? Anything you want to talk about there?
I want to plug the fact that Clark Gregg also wrote the adaptation of Chuck Palahniuk's Choke.
Yeah, dude, that guy's all over the place.
That's weird.
I read that book.
I read that book.
I read that book because there was a time when if Chuck Palahniuk came out with a book, you were like, I guess I have to read it.
Yes, I have so many of his books because they're really easy reads. That's the thing. Is like I'd read them in a shift at work. They're breezy as shit.
There's a line. I never finished Choke, and I don't know why I had this visceral experience. I was just very contrarian at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that Chuck Palahniuk is very contrarian, but like there's one point where he's literally doing the same thing that he does in Fight Club, right? It's like, I think he's basically meeting a Marley. He meets a woman by going to these self-help therapy circles and stuff like that, because that's where he goes to look for girls. And he gets a beej. The main character gets a beej in like a utility closet. And this is in the book Choke. And the line that Chuck Palahniuk decided to describe that interaction is that she throated my hog.
Like a true writer would describe it.
And I decided to read that sentence, close the book, and put it away.
You're like, that's enough of that.
And that's
book.
enough of, and I don't think that I've read Chuck Palahniuk after.
That's
I don't know why I'm not
funny.
like clutching my pearls. That's not like I'm like, my word.
No, that's very funny that you're like, that's it. I don't know why, but that's it.
And it was just like, I don't know. I don't need to get into it. It's one of those funny instances where it's like, look at yourself at 2003, and now look at yourself. And I think I won. I think I chose righteousness that day.
Well, I think you did too.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think we need to plug any other shit.
No, let's go.